Hello everyone, this is Dr. Carmen Bryant. Welcome back to my YouTube channel. Please join me on YouTube. It is Dr. Carmen Bryant, Overcoming Narcissist Abuse. Thank you guys. So many of you are new subscribers. Thank you so much for joining me and finding something valuable that I have to say concerning your recovery journey from narcissist abuse, or even your discovery that you may be in a relationship with a narcissist. I want to make sure that you are validated, but you're also provided with information to help you make informed decisions on whether to stay or whether to go. And if you have discovered you are in a relationship with a narcissist, it is better that you go. Matter of fact, it is recommended that you leave. However, the thing is those of you that are in relationship with narcissists that have children, for some of you, it's not that easy just to pick up and go, because the narcissist can turn that back around you and can accuse you of abandonment or kidnapping the children. And so when there are children involved, you have to use wisdom instead of just getting up and going. And so I highly recommend using the domestic violence support services, the YWCA, even with sex trafficking programs, domestic violence. Those programs can also help relocate you if you need to be relocated, and of course to make a record within the legal system to help you escape your abuser or your tormentor. And so hopefully you guys are learning something from this. First of all, today I would like to talk about what we've been discussing and my mentor has been discussing. I wanted to come because I have had someone ask me, what is a super empath? And so I wanted to break down the codependent, the empath, and the super empath. Believe it or not, the super empath is a bad, shut your mouth. That's what they're pretty bad. When I say bad meaning good, not bad meaning bad. First of all, let's look and see. First of all, you do understand that on the narcissistic spectrum, for narcissists, just like for the empaths, they're on a spectrum. So you have the low, mid-grade to greater narcissist, and that is not economic status. A greater narcissist does not necessarily have to be a person that has money, fame, fortune. A lot of them do. A lot of greater narcissists do have money, and they are empowered by the money and the wealth that they have, but it is not based on the socioeconomic status. It is the amount of time or the growth within that narcissistic spectrum. So remember, the lower narcissists are ones that they don't understand really what they're doing. They just like the feeling of what they're doing, meaning that they're tormenting, they're harassing, they're controlling. These are the ones that cannot control all of them can't control the impulses. It's just more insidious at how they do what they do. And so the lower narcissists are the ones that will kill you. They're also violent, physically violent to family and to the partner, or the partner that the partner thinks that they're in. The partnership is really not a partnership. It's a hot mess ship. But they are... they like the way it feels to do what they do. And so it's like, I do this and you respond this way. I poke here and then you scream in pain. So they enjoy the pain that they inflict. They just don't know it's not, it is not perfected yet. A mid-range narcissist, as you go up the spectrum, a mid-range narcissist begins to understand that what they're doing is a cause and effect. They haven't mastered the skill yet. They still have violent streaks in them. But they haven't mastered it totally, but they know that when I do this, this happens. And when I do this, this happens. They're still mastering that skill, their skills within the narcissistic spectrum. The greater narcissist, these are the ones that are hidden in plain sight. These are the ones, all of them have this charisma. They manipulate. You guys understand, we've talked about it. You guys have talked about, the narcissist. Well, the greater narcissist has perfected that skill. These are the ones that are hidden in plain sight and very hard to encounter, or not encounter, but hard to a lot of times to recognize. These are the ones that take a lot of time. They have a lot of patience, and they take a lot of time in studying the subject or the victim that they're after next. These are the ones that will study you on social media, watch how you act, watch how you speak. What are your interests? What do you say? What is it that is a weakness for you? So if you're the type of person that likes to show off your body, on Facebook all the time, they watch that. Everything to them is a cue. Everything to them, they watch every little detail, how you wear your makeup, how you wear your hair, how you take pictures, what do you talk about a lot, what do you brag about a lot. If you're really into your looks, they know to hone in on that. But they will even come ride by your place of residence, or find your place of residence, find where you work, and ride by to study you, watch you in the crowd. They're in plain sight, but you don't know that they're there watching you, studying you. These are the ones that will invest in a background check to check out where you've lived. And I think my mentor has said that. Check out where you live, check out your interests, check out your education, what school, the people that you've been around. They take a lot of times to study their victims. And they are capable of inflicting the utmost amount of pain and damage to your heart, where a lot of people have committed suicide. And then that's along the spectrum. So that is the narcissistic spectrum. Well, on the empath, you do know that you have autism, which also has the low, mid-grade to high empathetic, and those are not narcissists. Some narcissists are actually autistic as well, and some of them are what you will call the Asperger, have the Asperger's. But autism is a whole different spectrum itself. And then you have these are all the disorders, problems with empathy. Now then you have the empathy spectrum, where you have people that have empathy. It's okay to have, you're supposed to have some type of empathy, or I think something is wrong with you, or most people will think something is wrong with you. And so healthy empathy, meaning that you're able to put your feet in someone else's shoes and feel empathy and still be able to work, but you don't absorb them. And so now speaking on the, I'm sorry, trying to get myself together, but now speaking on the empaths, so on the empathy, so you have what's called the codependent. So you have codependents which have traits of empathy, but it's confusing. Codependency is a term that was used and it was developed when you dealt with in Alcohol Anonymous, or for alcoholic families. The codependents are ones that are enablers. Those are the ones that enable the alcoholic, or they enable the person with the problem to continue having a problem. They're the ones that need to be needed, need to be wanted. They can be very manipulative, and they assume that their compassion and their need to help people is a plus. It means that they love people. And so here on Site Central by Darlene Lancer, she has I think JD is a jurisprudence, which is a law degree, and is a marriage family therapist. She gave some symptoms of codependency. And so let's see. Let's look. Let me make sure I didn't miss anything out to make sure I describe this. So codependency is characterized by a person belonging to a dysfunctional, one-sided relationship where one person relies on another for meeting nearly all of their emotional and self-esteem needs. And so you have a codependent in a relationship with a narcissist. They totally depend on that narcissist to fill all their needs. This is a disaster waiting to happen. Some of the, it says research also found that the codependent symptoms got worse if left untreated. And so, but it is reversible. Some symptoms of codependency, here's a list, and you don't need all of them to qualify as a codependent. Low self-esteem, which you also find in narcissists or even in empaths. Low self-esteem, they never feel good enough, or they always compare themselves to others, which is a sign of low self-esteem. Let's see, people-pleasing, they have a problem with people-pleasing. And there's nothing wrong with wanting to please someone you care about, but codependents usually don't think that they have a choice. Saying no causes them anxiety, and some codependents have a hard time saying no to anyone, even empaths. But we'll get to that. So to go out of their way to sacrifice their own needs to accommodate people, they feel like, people pleasing, this is something that they're supposed to do. They're obligated to do it. They have poor boundaries. And let's see. Let's look. They have blurry or weak boundaries. They feel responsible for other people's feelings and problems, or blame their own on someone else's. Some codependents have rigid boundaries. They're closed off and withdrawn, making it hard for other people to get close to them. Sometimes people flip back and forth having weak boundaries, and having rigid boundaries. Reactivity, they react instead of respond. And so because of the poor boundaries, they react to people's thoughts and feelings. You can't read people's mind, but they react off of what they think a person might be thinking about them. If someone says they disagree with them, they either believe it and become very defensive, but they absorb their words because there's no boundaries. Let's see. With a boundary, you'd realize just their opinion and not a reflection of you, and not feel threatened by disagreements. Caretaking. Another effect of poor boundaries is that if someone else has a problem, you want to help them to a point that you give yourself up. And they're talking about codependence and signs and symptoms. It's natural to feel empathy or sympathy for someone, but codependents start putting other people ahead of themselves. In fact, they need to help and might feel rejected if another person doesn't want help. Moreover, they keep trying to help and fix the other person, even when the person clearly isn't taking their advice. And so caretaking versus caregiving, they have this insatiable need to be needed. So they have to fix your problems, even when you're like, I got this, and you saying, I got this, I can take care of it myself, to them feels like rejection. And they feel like, they feel rejected, they feel hurt, they take it very personal. They do have a problem with control. So control helps codependents feel safe and secure. And so everyone needs to control. Okay, we get past that. Let's look. People pleasing and caretaking can be used to control and manipulate people. And you'll find that some codependents are very bossy. They tell you what you should and shouldn't do, and this is a violation of other people's boundaries. They have a dysfunctional communication, so codependents have trouble when it comes to communicating their thoughts and feelings. And let's see, they're afraid of the truth, or they're afraid to be truthful because they don't want to upset people. So instead of saying, I don't like that, they may pretend that it's okay or tell someone what to do. Communication becomes dishonest and confusing. And so when you try to manipulate the other person out of fear. So it's codependent. Obsession. A lot of them have obsessive problems, obsession problems. They become obsessed when they think that they made or might have made a mistake. Sometimes they lapse into fantasy about someone you love, or a way to avoid pain of the present. Let's see. Dependency. Codependents need other people to like them to feel okay about themselves. So think about a codependent being in a relationship with a narcissist. They have that insatiable need to be liked, and a narcissist uses this as a weapon against a codependent because they have this fear of being rejected and abandoned. And so let's see. Others always need to be in a relationship because they feel depressed or lonely when they're themselves, when they're by themselves too long. So this trait makes it hard for them to end a relationship, even when the relationship is painful or abusive. They end up feeling trapped. So imagine a codependent in a relationship with a narcissist. A narcissist will tear their minds and hearts up. And they like codependence because it's easy to really just manipulate that codependent. And many codependents, you'll find them trying to commit suicide or having committed suicide, or you feel that you'll find them hospitalized or in inpatient treatment because they cannot handle the pain inflicted by a narcissist. They deny. Let me see. A lot of them deny that they have a problem. They will explain it away, let them know that this is, you're supposed to care about people. They deny their feelings and needs. Let's see. But they pay attention to other people's needs and not their own. They might be in denial of their need for space and autonomy. And let's see, they're needy. They're very needy people, and they act self-sufficient when it comes to needing help. They won't reach out, and they have problems receiving. And their denial for vulnerability and a need for love and intimacy. So they deny a lot. They deny that they have a problem. They look at everybody else's problem and they need to fix the problem. They're fixers. They have a problem with intimacy, and this means intimate relationship, not sex, but intimacy, because they always feel that they're always in fear of being judged or rejected. Let's see, and painful emotion. Codependence creates stress and it leads to painful emotions. Shame and low self-esteem creates anxiety and fear about being judged, rejected, abandoned, making mistakes, being a failure, feeling trapped by being close or being alone, and other symptoms that leads to feelings of anger and resentment, depression, hopelessness, and despair. So that is codependent. And with the codependent, a narcissist will have a field day. And a lot of codependent people, they do have empathetic traits, but they're more codependent. And so they and like I said, it comes from, the term comes from alcoholic families when they created this, the theory of the alcoholic family and the codependent and people that were in the midst of an alcoholic family. But codependents are enablers. They enable people instead of helping them and allowing them to be responsible and accountable for their own feelings. A codependent will enable you to continue that. They're the ones that give you money to get the drugs. And so with a narcissist, they enable the narcissist to continue their bad behavior because they feel like they have not done enough to help the narcissist get, or change or help them heal. And the narcissist knows that and will use that, their emotions, and they'll use that against the codependent. Well, the codependent, being as fragile as they are, you will find a lot of codependent trying to commit suicide, self-injury, eating disorders, and you'll find a lot of them in the hospital, hospitalized, inpatient treatment, because the narcissist will tear their minds up. So now let's talk about the empath. So empath, which the term empath, it kind of originates from the those that are into like the metaphysical, psychic type. I'm a Christian. I'm a believer, and so I'm not into the metaphysical and the psychic type of belief system. But empath came from kind of that type of belief system, as people would label an empath a person with psychic abilities or supernatural abilities, when in actuality an empath is just very highly sensitive. And there is some scientific on this site that I'm gonna tell you guys as you read down to the bottom. There's some scientific information on what the possibilities of some brain chemical structure you might find within the empath mind. But an empath, they are very sensitive, and when I say sensitive, that not meaning that they're highly sensitive or hypersensitive, but they have traits and signs of which I'm getting ready to name in just a second, but just so you guys can look here on what are empaths, 14 empath traits and scientific theories. I'm not going to read the theories, I'm just going to read some of the traits. And this is the lawofattraction.com, empath traits. And so here is, let's see, they describe, who's the author? Catherine Hurst. And here she talks about, basically in a roundabout way, empaths are individuals that pick up and absorb the emotions of others around them. Being able to like read a person's energy, facial expressions, body language, and a lot of that we do in therapy. In the world of psychology, we don't just listen to the words that come out of a person's mouth. We look at the body psychology. We watch the body language. The body language, there's more nonverbal communication going on as opposed to verbal communication. Like for example, when I give an example of someone lying, you ask them a question and they say no. Well, nonverbal communication is just giving you an indicator that they're lying. They're giving you that, a lot of body language will tell on people. And these are the things that we study within the world of psychology. And so even with an empath, they read body language. They can feel the energy. You can feel a person's energy when they walk in a room, whether they're very, very depressed, where it's like there's just this gloom around them, or people that have just gotten an argument, or people that have all this high energy, like ADHD or bipolar. They come in with all this energy, and you're like, whoa, that's a lot of energy. You need to calm down. You're sucking out the energy from the room. Or even depression, you are sucking out the energy from the room. And so, but empath, they talk about, what she talks about here, that they're not limited in detecting emotions. They can pick up on physical sensations, someone else's spiritual orientation. They also are able to tune into a person's motivation or immediately read their intentions. In some cases, empaths are entirely aware that they're experiencing feelings that don't belong to them. However, in some cases, empaths may genuinely are confused by what they pick up, and they take responsibility of what they pick up. Someone is sick, someone is hurting. You tend to pick up on those emotions and take responsibility. So you are drained and you begin to lose energy because you are so in tune with another person and your desire to help them feel better that you literally take upon their pain and their energy and their hurt. And so here are some traits. Empaths are highly sensitive and emotional. They're very open, easy to trust, and very responsive to emotional experiences, whether their own or someone else's. Let's see, they're often introverts and need alone time, and so they while you likely love intensely and generally care for people, your propensity to take on emotion means that alone time is essential. Indeed, most empaths recharge when they're on their own rather than deriving energy from social situations like extroverts do, or narcissists. Let's see, they're easy targets for manipulators or narcissists. Narcissists like empaths. Let's see, they have great intuition and keen sense. And so a lot of the traits of an empath is the ability to pick up on subtle cues way earlier than most people. You may notice a potential romance between two friends before anyone else does, or you may pick up on indications of danger very quickly. You probably have a talent for taking calculated risks, and your intuition is pretty sharp. Let's see, they take on other people's feelings and issues. Just said that a few minutes ago. Empaths tend to be incredibly creative. The heightened emotions and experience of empaths give them an enormous wealth of material expressed in creative way. If you're an empath, it's likely you're frequently inspired because of what you feel. So think about a lot of empaths write beautiful music and poetry and poems and movies that really stimulate the emotions. Matter of fact, it says it right here, traditional artists, music writers, actors, dancers, physically expressive in other ways. In many cases, creative acts help empaths release pent-up emotion in a healthy, productive way. People say they're great listeners, okay? Empaths are good listeners, and they listen. And some empaths, as you're talking, create a three-dimensional picture in their head. And so when you talk, they create a picture in their head of what you're going through or what you're saying. Let's see. And they put on other people's shoes. So empathy, having empathy and being an empath, meaning you're able to put your feet in other people's shoes. No one is better at doing this than someone who intuitively picks up on emotions. Let's see. Empaths are wonderful at putting a loved one's feelings into words and making them feel understood, respected, and less alone. Consequently, empaths often gravitate toward jobs that involve listening, counseling, and teaching. They hate to say no, so a lot of empaths have boundary issues because they hate to say no because they don't want people to be disappointed, desperate, desperate, sad. So a lot of them have a problem with saying no. And so if you're an empath, that's a gift. It's okay to be an empath. But the problem is, number one, a lot of you got involved with a narcissist, so you did not learn to balance your boundaries. And so now you're coming to the time to know how to use empathy, but how to step back and say no and create your own boundaries, which for many of you is very hard to do. Let's see. If you're an empath, you also are used to doing emotional labor for other people that you may just automatically expand this to induce general favors if you are already overburdened. And so even within the clinical setting, young therapists, we teach them that you have to allow the people to do the work because a young therapist will have, they're so desperate to help people heal that they take upon and do all the work instead of holding the people that are coming to counseling accountable, or making them look for the answers. You give them the tools and then they want you to do all the work instead of letting them do all the work and discover and get the aha or the revelation of what they're going through. They want you to explain everything. They want you to do everything. And so they come out of counseling exhausted, burnt out, and some of them vicarious trauma. They're good lie detectors too. Their ability to pick up on lies. A lot of you pick up on those red flags, but you went past the red flags and got involved with the narcissist anyway. But you picked up on the red flags. You knew something wasn't right, but because of the goodness in your heart and because you have that tendency to want to see the good in people and you have that hope, the narcissist rides off of that hope and they ride off of the goodness on you, and that's why they're able to manipulate you. Even though you pick up on the lies, even though a lot of you step back like, I knew it all along, I just went past the red flags. You went past the caution signs. They suffer from fatigue and anxiety. See, let's see. The level of kindness you extend to others may be downright exhausting. Let's see, you're busy trying to carry people's emotions, listen to their issues, and help them solve their problems that you may become physically fatigued or emotionally strung out. So a lot of empaths are susceptible to chronic fatigue syndrome and mental health issues like anxiety and depression. You can become very easily overwhelmed with it says empathetic powers, but you can be easily overwhelmed by your empathy. Let's see, and you have to learn certain techniques to separate your emotions, and it's very easy to tip back over and being overwhelmed again. Empaths love to be surrounded by nature because it brings you a sense of peace. Love being in a quiet place by the ocean, taking nature walks, just being by yourself and absorbing the environment and nature. You just want to be calm. Some of you guys like those, those noise machines that has the water playing in the background. And a lot of empaths are daydreamers. They daydream a lot. Empaths often neglect themselves in trying to help other people, so they tune out their own needs, and in extreme cases they tend to self-neglect, leading you to become physically or emotionally unwell. Let's see, and an empath would take advantage of that. And as you go down, there's also scientific information in reference to some of the theories surrounding how an empath is an empath and the way that the brain works. So you guys can go back on this site. So now let's go to the super empath. Let's find the super empath. Where is the super empath? Okay. So first of all, a super empath. So if you read studies, it talks about how children are born with narcissistic traits. So you see the young children growing up, and a lot of them have narcissistic traits. Mine, me, look at me. And within, of developmental stages, as you're teaching children empathy, it becomes more of, they become more empathetic. They learn to, be respectful to people. They learn, the pain of others and being, and some of them do, develop narcissistic personality disorder. But, but now you have a lot of people that do have narcissistic traits, coming from families that they were raised by narcissists. They may have been in a lot of narcissistic relationship, but there are some narcissistic traits there. However, they're still empaths. There are empathetic people, and a narcissist loves the super empath because of the fact that a super empath has a very high tolerance to emotional pain. Codependents have a very low tolerance to emotional pain. Empaths have a tolerance for emotional pain. A lot of you are suffering, but a super empath has a very, very high tolerance for emotional and psychological pain. They are very empathetic. They're very loving. They usually have jobs that deal with the public and people, and very highly empathetic, highly empathetic. And for a narcissist, it gives the maximum amount of fuel. You'll find yourself, making sure that narcissist, male or female, is well taken care of. You are the ultimate fuel for a narcissist. However, a super empath also has narcissistic traits. And when you are in a relationship with a narcissist, you actually pick up on some of their traits. You know what you feel like when they do what they do. And what happens is that a empath, when enough is enough, when they've been through, some of you been through many years of abuse, many years of, this narcissistic a mess. So some of you didn't even know that you were in a narcissistic relationship. And what happens is when enough is enough, you never can cut off your empathy. You are an empath, but you're able to put up your boundaries, shut it off temporarily. And you never totally shut it off. Move it to a side temporarily, and you take upon narcissistic traits to begin to fight that narcissist back. And so what ends up happening is a lot of things that narcissist does to you, you do it right back. And it becomes World War III, Star Wars. What is the other one? Star Wars. Battlestar Galactica. And what happens is your narcissist, you allow those narcissistic traits to come up against that narcissist, because enough is enough. And what happens is, for a lot of empaths who have not learned to regulate and have not become aware of those are narcissistic traits, you begin to fight that narcissist. It's called you shift into supernova. And once you hit that supernova, when enough is enough, you begin to fight that narcissist the way the narcissist fights you. You'll ghost them, you'll gaslight them, you'll manipulate them, you'll mirror them. Whatever they do to you, you begin to do to them. Whatever hurt them the most, you have studied them along with them studying you. And so you picked up on a lot of things that they do and a lot of their weaknesses, and then you reverse it and flip it back on them. So you do the same thing that the narcissist does. However, you're still empathetic and you still feel. A narcissist does not have empathy at all, does not have compassion, does not have the ability to bond. An empath, even a super empath, still does. But when enough is enough, you kick into supernova. And when you kick into supernova, it is narcissist against narcissist, even though you're not a narcissist. And you become the narcissist's worst nightmare. And you get to a point where you'll put your empathetic feelings to the side to do what's best for you, and that's to leave the relationship. You'll focus on healing and getting away. And the narcissist, out of his character or her character, just out of their nature, will just continue to attack you. And what they don't realize is that you have the ability not to react, but to respond. And so you'll study what they're doing. And remember, we were talking about the greater narcissist that sits back and watches you and studies you and picks up on you and does background searches on you. Well, what ends up with a super empath, they begin to do the same. If you don't leave a super empath alone, they'll begin to do the same thing, and they purposely inflict the maximum amount of pain and narcissistic injury on that narcissist. For the lower and mid-range narcissists, this is like a blow that is so hard it knocks them off kilter. It knocks them to a point where their head is spinning, and a lot of them would try to get away from you because they become afraid of you, and they go find another supply, or if they have a secondary supply, everything that they wanted to do to you, that new supply or that secondary supply will end up paying for what you're doing. Even with the greater narcissist, a greater narcissist doesn't know when to stop. And so if you beat them at their game, they still calculate to try to figure out how to get you back. But what happens is it's almost like they headbutt. And so on the narcissist scale, you have the greater narcissist. On the empathy scale, you have that greater empath. That greater empath is the one that's capable of going supernova and has narcissistic traits. These bad boys or bad girls, these right here are the equivalent of the greater narcissist. And when they have had enough, but they're the greater empath, meaning that they give the maximum amount of fuel, they'll take care of you, big hearts, do anything. And the narcissist loves it. They crave this type of fuel. But what they don't realize is that when they shift into supernova, when they've had enough is enough, they kick right into narcissist, and it becomes the battle. It's like the clash of the titans, because then, and what happens with the super empaths, they have to learn, because some of you guys, you try to go after that narcissist with everything you got to make them pay, and they do suffer. But the problem is you don't know when to stop. And then you have to learn that, you can't fight fire with fire, and that the narcissist will keep coming after you, even though they're being cut, stabbed, destroyed. They're fighting this battle with this super empath back to back to back. And every time they're ramming against you, you two are ramming heads, and that is what a super empath is. Let me give you the definition of the supernova. Of what supernova actually is. Supernova in the Merriam-Webster, the explosion of a star in which the star may reach a maximum intrinsic luminosity 1 billion times that of the sun. Wait till I explain it. One that explodes in prominence or popularity. Check this out. So, where do supernovas take place? Okay, let me look. Let me skip down. What causes a supernova? Now, I want you guys to think from the perspective of an empath, a super empath that goes supernova dealing with a narcissist. Okay, think like this when I explain it, okay? So a supernova happens when there is a change in the core, when you have a realization, when you finally had enough, when you finally said that's it. When you finally realize you're not going to change and you're really out to destroy me. A change can occur in two different ways with both resulting in supernova. Check this out. The first type of supernova happens in a binary solar system. Binary stars are two stars that orbit the same point. Narcissist, empath, orbiting the same point, right? One of the stars, carbon oxygen white dwarf, steals matter. Okay, check this out. Now, this to me was funny. A carbon oxygen white dwarf, the narcissist, the little dwarf that makes himself look bigger and larger and more empowered, and they're really a dwarf. Okay, a carbon oxygen white dwarf, the narcissist, steals matter from his companion star, from the person that they're connected with their supply. They're stealing matter. Okay, hold on. Let me reverse it. Let me go back. Let me rewind. Okay. Let me rewind. It just sounded really good when I was saying that. But in actuality, one of the stars, a carbon oxygen white dwarf, actually is the supply. Okay, so it actually is the empath. So I apologize. But it sounded good for just a minute. I was getting ready to just start cracking jokes as I was going. Okay, let's go back. So one of the stars, a carbon oxygen white dwarf, which is actually the empath star. Okay, dang. Is actually the empath star. Steals matter from its companion star. Eventually, the white dwarf accumulates too much matter. Having too much matter causes the star to explode, resulting in a supernova. And so what happens is you the white dwarf star, which is the empath, you're absorbing so much. That super empath is absorbing so much, taking so much pain, because you have a very high tolerance to pain. So you keep on taking it. And you're really not stealing it, you're absorbing this. But you're also paying attention to what they're doing and how they're doing it. You're very intuitive, remember? You're very intuitive. You know, you're picking up on certain things. You're beginning to have that realization, but you're absorbing this. And eventually what happens is you got too much in you, where it gets to a point where like enough is enough. And all of a sudden you flip the script and you go supernova and you explode. When you go supernova, you shift from empath, which you'll never stop being an empath. That makes you different than a narcissist, because you do have empathy. You never stop being an empath, but you're able to subdue your empathy for a moment, and you begin to operate as a narcissist. You go after them, you explode and go after them with all the narcissistic traits that actually were in you in the first place. The second type of supernova occurs at the end of the single star's lifetime. When you've had enough and you've run your course with this narcissist. As a star runs out of nuclear fuel, you've run out of fuel to give this narcissist. You choose, I'm not giving you no more fuel. That's it. I'm done. You're not getting any more fuel from me. Some of it mass flows into the core. Starts flowing into your core. That's it. I'm not giving you no more fuel. Eventually the core is so heavy that it cannot withstand its own gravitational force. That's it. I can't stand this gravitational force. You don't put too much on me. You don't put too much in me. I'm tired. You're not changing. The core collapses, which results in a giant explosion of supernova. And if there's a narcissist around and you go supernova, that's it. That's head-to-head, headbutting. The sun is a singular star. Okay, it talks about the sun, so it won't do the sun. But think about it. That is supernova. When that empath finally has had enough, and that narcissist has done enough to hurt you, the super empath will just all of a sudden shift and go supernova on you. And when they explode and go supernova, it's narcissist against narcissist. And so just like the greater narcissist within the narcissistic spectrum is like the greater empath. They're on the same playing field. The greater narcissist, the super empath. So see, the super empath is very powerful. The thing is, though, is that you have to learn not to fight fire with fire. You're smart enough to respond instead of react. And when you go supernova, you're reacting and not responding. But you're going toe-to-toe with this narcissist, and you're causing the maximum amount of injury to that narcissist. You're doing the same thing the narcissist is doing to the supply on a all the time basis. A super empath does not do this at all times. When they've been fed up, that's when they do it. And they go straight supernova and cause a lot of damage. And the bad part about it is when you've done and you and you go back to being your old empathetic self again, you're super empathetic, you actually feel bad about what you've done. Wow, I can't believe I did that. It is so wrong. And that makes me just as bad as the narcissist. But see, you have the ability to feel empathy and feel bad about the situation. A narcissist doesn't care. But do know that narcissists always try to figure out a way to get you back, especially the greater narcissist. You beat me at my game. Now I got to figure out how to get you back. They'll come back 10 years later and they think that they've perfected the game. They just don't realize that you'll go supernova on them again. So hopefully this has helped you and gave you some explanation of the codependent empath and the super empath, and how powerful a super empath really is. So those of you that are super empath, recognize yourself as a super empath. You're pretty powerful. But remember, you can't react. You have to respond. They want the reaction, but they have no idea what's in store for them. They want the reaction from the empath and the codependent. They need that fuel. But what they don't realize is with a super empath, once you hit that core, once you tapped in it like oil, and that supernova happens, they're not prepared for what, they literally fear, but it's a challenge to the greater narcissist. To them, it's a challenge. But what they don't realize, it'll tear a narcissist up. But you got to be careful, because you can't fight, because a narcissist never sleeps. They always think of how to get you back, even years later. So hopefully this has helped you, gave an explanation of what actually this dynamic is. Now, this was a long video because I wanted to take time to teach you about it, and that's why I kind of waited a little while before I did it. I need to make sure I had time to do it. So hopefully this explains some things about the super empath and going supernova. And so thank you guys for tuning in. Please subscribe to my YouTube channel. It is Dr. Carmen Bryant, Overcoming Narcissist Abuse. I do have a Facebook page. I'm trying to change it, but they're not letting me change it. It's Psychological Health Consultants and Services. And on the top, you'll see Overcoming Narcissist Abuse. Please, subscribe, hit the like button, and over on the YouTube channel, hit the subscribe and the bell. So whenever I upload new videos Tuesday through Friday. I come on live Sundays between 8 and 9 o'clock Pacific Standard Time, West Coast time. So you guys come and talk to me. I try not to make it super focused. I try to focus on the questions, and I open it up for you guys to talk to me. Normally I pre-record during the week because I want to stay focused on the topic, and usually if I do it live, you guys come in with a lot of questions. I can't stay focused on the topic, so I want to stay focused on the topic without the questions scrolling up on the screen. So hopefully this has helped you. Leave some comments. Tell me what you think. Tell me if you recognize yourself. And to let you know you probably need some therapy, but see if you recognize yourself. Thank you once again. As my friend always says, go and be great.